Councilmember Lewis.
Yes, the city secretary by charter is supposed to be handling these expenses. There have not been, as long as the city secretary's office had oversight over the expenses and travel, there has not been any problem. But the present status of it, there's been problems. Now, when I came back from D.C., I had an opportunity on the 18th to witness a meeting with the task force. I was part of that meeting with the task force. And what was presented to that task force was the abuse of the travel policy. Receipts, supporting documents is turned over to the task force. Now, even the special investigator recognized wherever these travel being handled, is being processed, it's a problem. You all need to do something about it. So what I'm saying, let's put it back in the city secretary's hand. Let the city secretary handle the travel from now on.
Councilman Albright.
Yes, Mayor. The city ordinance. Well, that's a question for city attorney or city secretary. City ordinance right now states that the city secretary take care of the council members' travel. Correct?
It was reviewed by our office today. It doesn't address the travel arrangements. Our office takes responsibility after the trip is taken. It doesn't really specify who takes care of the travel. We are required to audit for the receipts and present it to council. Unless you have found something that we hadn't, under the charter or the travel ordinance, it just addresses the post-travel paperwork for us. So it's not written. We're at the pleasure of the council on that.
Okay, city attorney, I see you digging.
Yeah, just to explain on the exhibit that's attached, the proposed change on the exhibit is just adding what would happen for prior travel arrangements. So on that section B, it does, as she said, it doesn't have any specificity for prior travel arrangements. And so that's the change that's being requested. Now I think, correct me if I'm wrong, if after they come back, the city secretary handles it. But there is no specificity for who does what for prior travel arrangements. And that's on the attachment in section B. So it's adding who would handle arrangements for council members prior to. The ordinance we have only addresses what happens when you come back.
And in reference to what was said earlier by Councilmember Lewis, the young lady who's tasked with working for council and mayor makes the travel arrangements for the council members. She takes care of their expense reports. I don't touch any of it, not any of it. I don't see your travel arrangements. I don't see your receipts or anything until it gets on this agenda. And I know what the intent of this is, and that's perfectly okay. But just for the record, because it's being taped, I have absolutely nothing to do with, because if I had that $250 cab ride, I would have requested some proof for that, but I have nothing to do with that. I do not touch any of your stuff. Mayor Pro Tem.
I think we're going to run into at least a perceptual problem, if not an actual one. The council's travel is not currently audited by finance. Finance only pre-clears. The audit takes place in the city secretary's office. And if we pass this ordinance and we make the city secretary responsible for the arrangements, what we're effectively doing is forcing her to audit herself. Or we're going to have to come back and then put finance or some other audit mechanism into it. I think we'd be better off to leave things just like they are.
Councilmember Lewis?
Everybody works for the city manager, with the exception of the city secretary and the city attorney. Okay? All the city manager needs to do is to order his employees, do not, if anyone is out of compliance with the travel policy, you don't pay these individuals their stipend or their salary, or monthly salary. You do not pay these people until they come into compliance. That's what has been happening. People have been was out of compliance with their travel, and being out of compliance with their travel, and finance department was still issuing checks. So what you need to do, city manager, and this is on you, you need to order your people, because everybody works for you. You order those people. Do not pay anybody monthly checks or allow any additional travel if they are out of compliance with that ordinance. That's all you have to do.
Councilmember Scott?
Thank you, Mayor. City Secretary, would this be a task that your office can't handle?
We'll always have.
We have extensive experience in this task, and we could handle it, but I would, if I'm not overstepping my bounds, like to say as well that we are the office that trained the executive secretary in the mayor's office. If there is something that the task force is finding wrong with the procedures, we have trained that person, and we as administrators need to know what fault is being found with the procedure, and we would also need to know basically that. And I guess if we're going to be at the pleasure of the council and given this task, I would like a more detailed instruction on how to handle it, because when your travel is done, it comes to our office for us to check for receipts and to check that everything is within the GSA guidelines for your per diems, and we approve it to go on council. So whether or not we made the arrangements or not, we are approving it as the city secretary's office to be put on the agenda and come before council. So I would like a further clarification on what is not being done, or what is the corrections that need to be made, I guess is my statement, on the actual process or the turning it over to council, because it does actually end up in our office, whether it's ahead of time or behind time, or after. If we do pitch hit for each office.
So if it end up in your office, you can handle the task. That's what I'm asking. Right?
Oh, yes, sir. We're at the pleasure of the council. We have several, probably combined 16 years of doing council travel.
Thank you.
Councilmember Williamson?
Never mind.
Councilmember Lewis?
Yes, the city secretary's office, my first 18 years I was involved, they always handle this stuff. They always handle travel. City secretary, and when they did their audits, when you brought your hotel receipts back and whatever, you brought all those things back, they would audit you. This is not allowed, this is not allowed, this is not allowed, these things are not allowed. So you have to pick those things, pay for those things yourself before they were submitted for approval. That is not happening. It is not happening. There are certain reimbursements should have been made to the taxpayer, has not happened. Now, when it was brought before this council, the council members raised these questions, then they decided they're gonna go, some of them, and go and unrob the bank or unring the bell. They started going back and reimbursing. That's a no-no. That's not an option. That's one of the things that the task force is looking at. You can't unring a bell, you can't unrob a bank and still serve it.
City Secretary, anything that he said is the truth. that you're aware of.
I'm sorry, I don't think there's
Sure,
enough
that's
clarification to know
what.
what subject we're talking about. Because I don't prove anything that does not have the proper documentation
That's what I thought.
behind it to go before council. So if then that falls on me, that does not fall on your
Well,
office.
you've answered my
The
question.
last place the documents stop is my office before the agenda.
You've answered my question. None of it's true.